Very excited to be here today. We're going to have a great discussion. This Thursday is World Password Day. It was created by Intel to try to get the world to think about going beyond using password as your password. Good ways of dealing with cybersecurity. But we thought we'd have a twist on this. We're thinking about passwordless day. And who knows, maybe this will be the start of rebranding this whole idea going forward. So what we're going to do and talk about in this discussion is, what are the challenges of passwords? These nagging issues that seem to never go away. And then we're also going to look at what are the benefits of passwordless, going that direction, such as the pass keys. And then also, what will it take to make this transition to a passwordless world? What's that going to involve? So again, we have a great panel today, and I'd like to first start off with Alvina, and she can go and provide some of her own background.
Yes, thanks a lot, Tom. Thanks for holding this exciting conversation. I'm so excited to actually be in a position to rebrand this day, as you mentioned, Passwordless Day. I'm Alvina Antar, CIO at Okta. I've been at Okta for just under 3 years, and it's truly been a huge focus of mine internally. To focus on our own passwordless journey at Okta with our Okta on Okta efforts, and so I'm excited to have this conversation.
Great, and next I'd like to go with Vishnu, and he can provide his background.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Vishnu Alaparthi, I'm a partner in PwC Cyber Risk and Regulatory. My focus at PwC is around identity and access management. I help our clients solve some of their complex identity challenges. One of those is including authentication. So I'm happy to be here and share my perspectives, and really excited to be part of this conversation.
And finally, but of course not least, we have Andrew. He can go and provide some of his own background in this area.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So my name is Andrew Shikiar. I serve as an executive director at FIDO Alliance. FIDO Alliance is the industry body working to create open standards and best practices for implementing passwordless authentication. I've been in the identity space for 20-something years now. And my current role at FIDO, I'm helping drive adoption and awareness of our standards and guidelines for FIDO authentication.
Perfect. So for the first topic, let's go through a general overview of just passwords. And the first password was created in 1960 at MIT. It was because the emergence of time sharing, and these massive, you could allow these massive mainframes to be privately allocated to different people and different users. It was really the emergence of what would become eventually cloud computing. It's amazing all these things that we think are new or happened back in the 1960s. What is also amazing is that passwords just don't go away. I mean, they just stay. They just have remained a big part of our world. So I'd like to start with Andrew and just look at, talk a little bit about your take on passwords and how they've evolved, especially in the past few years, because we have these new technologies that can go beyond that.
Yeah. It was interesting. I'd say the state of passwords today is not that dissimilar from where it was 50 to 60 years ago, which is remarkable. I saw someone quoted once, and so I'm ripping this off, saying that passwords are the cockroaches of the internet. They just stick around, and you can't quite get rid of them. And it's quite staggering. I mean, what other technology would you be using today that you would have also used, say, 40 years ago, let alone 50 years ago? Bill Gates, famously predicted their demise, back in 2004. That's nearly 20 years ago. So, it's just this weird conundrum, because we've known for decades that they're insufficient from a security and usability standpoint, yet they do persist. I note that our collective answer to the password problem has been to add layers or factors on top of passwords. All right, so 2FA, MFA, any second factor is better than a password alone, but it's important to note that some, say like SMS OTP, actually share the same characteristics of passwords in the sense that they are knowledge-based and human readable, and likewise are being bypassed by hackers. So we need to move beyond not just passwords, but in my view, all kind of knowledge-based credentials as second factors as well. So to get to where we are today, I'd say the good news is, that the industry at large and enterprises around the world are getting smarter about passwords. All right, so we're moving away from what I'd say are well-intended but misguided password policies that have led to either simpler passwords or passwords on sticky notes, and are working towards forms of authentication that are not dependent on passwords or knowledge-based credentials at all. And I'd say most notably, the most notable shift over the past couple of years has been that every major platform vendor is now supporting open standards for passwordless authentication that are in their flagship operating systems. Right. So this means for the first time that virtually every modern computing device has the capability to support passwordless authentication.
Perfect. I'd like to keep Andrew on this one, but also Alvina, and then if Vishnu wants to opine. Despite all the great advantages of passwordless, we have these passwords still. What do you see are the problems with that? That remaining, that being kind of the status quo for a lot of these organizations and consumers. Andrew, you could start with that.
Yeah, sure. So I think the problem is as we stated, passwords lead to all sorts of problems. Right? They lead to data breaches, they lead to remote attacks, they hinder commerce, lead to shopping cart abandonment and things like that. And I think that the question I'm often asked is, why? Why do they persist? Why haven't we gotten rid of them yet? The simple answer is it's hard. It's hard to replace passwords because passwords and likewise OTPs have the advantage of ubiquity. Right? Everyone knows how to use passwords, like we talked about. Everyone who's online today has used a password. Right? Everyone knows how to use passwords. They're widely available, and you can use them on pretty much any device. But also, there hasn't been a scalable alternative. And I think that's the key thing to understand, is that there hasn't been a viable option to go passwordless that's easy enough for people to use at scale. And I think usability is so important. All right, so the technology, say we're using a FIDO Alliance, isn't new. It's basically an iteration of PKI. But what is new is the focus on making secure easy. All right, so if your MFA is too difficult, your employees work around it, and your consumers simply won't opt in. So I think those are the challenges that we're facing today that we're looking to turn the tide on.
Alvina, would you like to make?
Yeah, I'm 100%. It's just as Andrew mentioned, transformation is hard, right? If it was easy, I think we wouldn't be so reliant on the old ways, and it's been almost an accepted risk, right? It almost feels as though the passwordless journey is nirvana, like it's out of reach. And customers, I know from just my own experience and engaging with customers, they don't really understand the path to actually achieving a passwordless experience. And so, we need to meet customers where they are in their journey, and really, get them past this perception that it's out of reach and that it's so transformative that they're unable to understand what the steps are to actually achieving a true passwordless experience. And it's not a 100% immediate adoption. Like it is an iterative, phased implementation through our own experience. I can attest to that. But the issue is that there's just so much resistance to change. And, if you look at my peers, we spent today till this day, folks are still focusing on automating password resets as opposed to focusing on eliminating the password altogether. Right. And so just just the resistance to change and the focusing, the focus on the wrong things around automation as opposed to elimination.
Very good point. Now I'd like to talk more about the transition process and some of the progress that has been made over the years. So we've seen momentum with FIDO passkeys. Apple has moved in here. We've got Android and Chrome and Windows. So the big players are certainly, showing some interest in pushing things forward. So for the past few years, what have we seen? What are some of the takeaways in this adoption of passwordless? What is really being done? So maybe, more on the enterprise business side, Vishnu, maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Tom, like as you said, over the last few years, we've seen tremendous progress in terms of the technology, the open standards, the interoperability between the devices. So I think that's a big step forward. I think FIDO Alliance has a big role to play, and also the tech industry in general have adopted providing those capabilities as part of the core devices that we all use today, right? When it comes to like how you are adopting that, it's also a responsibility of all the users who are trying to use that. As Alvina talked about the change, we got to demand that passwordless future as an end user, because the tools are there, right? If you are using either Windows device or a Mac, the tools to use the passwordless way of authenticating, it's there. And the other element that I think about is, in my experience, a lot of enterprises, the large and small, they are trying to do something around passwordless. It's about how they do it, right? This FIDO Alliance or using passkeys is not the only way of getting towards passwordless authentication, right? So there are different methods that you can leverage to start enabling your end users to do that seamless authentication, right? So again, you're not only eliminating passwords, but also you don't have to reset password. There is tremendous amount of cost associated with maintaining the password, reset of those passwords, and all the other things that come with it, right? So the big advantage on the enterprise side is a lot of these companies have an authentication provider that can integrate with something like a FIDO supported authentication, which truly enables them passwordless. So it makes it a lot easier transition on the enterprise side than in the consumer side. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about the enterprise, but in my opinion, the biggest things that we're trying to solve now for our clients is what are those use cases where I cannot take a device with me, right? If I'm working in a very restricted environment, I cannot carry a passkey with me, right? How do I support those? So I think if you look at your normal use cases, I think 70 to 80% of use cases are solved today. And what we're trying to get there is how we can get to the last mile, like those 5 to 10 to 15% use cases to facilitate that seamless transition, right? So I think my point is start adopting what you have, right? Use the passkeys when you try to log into your laptop or your iOS device, or start leveraging them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the consumer is going to be, the difficult one. So, maybe Andrew can talk about that from a FIDO standpoint.
Yeah, well, I think in general, I think Alvina hit it on the head as Vishnu. Change is hard. Humans don't like change. And enterprises are worried about the cost of change. Change management has significant financial and human capital cost. And likewise, service providers, as they look at their consumers, are worried about forcing change onto customers. And then one other point here on the B2B side is that the vendors may have to transition some of their core businesses away from legacy authentication offerings to modern authentication offerings. But specific to consumers, yeah, there's a change issue there as well. And we've done a lot of testing and research on user experience. In fact, it's probably the most important thing we're doing inside of FIDO Alliance right now is investing in UX guidelines for, say, passkey implementations. But over the years, the conversations I've had about deploying FIDO have shifted almost 180 degrees. All right, so 5-6 years ago, the questions were like, well, how does this prevent fraud? Is this really unphishable? All the questions came from a security posture. Now, all the questions primarily come from a usability posture. Right, so how will this impact my customer experience? And what's the corresponding move there is thinking about this not just from a bottom line standpoint. And as Alvina said, for example, a lot of people bake in, say, fraud costs into their cost of doing business, but not just looking at how to reduce fraud, but how does this expand my top line? All right, so I was talking to an e-commerce provider the other week who mentioned that they have around an 85% sign-in success rate, which is actually quite high. But of that 15% of their customers, they'll often abandon purchases in their shopping carts. And also that 15%, when they do a password reset, they spend less money. So imagine if you can go from 85% to 86%, at a company of this scale, let alone 85% to 90%, and then the sign-in success rate is close to 100%, and your shopping cart abandonment goes down. I think all these things are are benefits that businesses will find once they roll out passkeys in a way that consumers can actually embrace them. And so we'll be releasing our UX guidelines in the next several weeks, but it's been very eye-opening to us as far as how you need to engage consumers to get them to enroll passkeys, and how you get them to ultimately use them. But once you cross that threshold, your sign and success rates will be much higher, and the opportunity to drive more revenue goes up as well.
And what about developers? They're obviously going to be playing a key role in this move to passwordless. So maybe Vishnu, from your standpoint, where do you see that headed in there?
Absolutely. And the consumer space, right? So my opinion, like as you're building your apps, like today, de facto is to just have a password way of registering users, right? Every developer, every new app that you're building, just like your operating system providers have done, have to give them an ability to enroll with like a passwordless way of authentication, right? Like, hey, bring your own passkeys, right? Or use your passkeys that are available in your device that you use, right? So I don't see that happening as much as it should, which would actually drive adoption of your passwordless in the consumer space, right? So I think as you are building your apps, as you're building your new modern technologies, have your end users, consumers, register their passkeys, not with their password, right? If you go into any new website that you want to register, I think they always ask you for a username and a password, right? But provide users to make a passkey as an option, or in fact, a primary option, and then use password as a backup, right? So obviously there are some use cases where you may have to have a password, but we don't see that happening as often as it should, right? So the developers have to change their mindset as well to make that passkey as an option, right? Not only for your web apps, but also mobile apps and everything else in between, right? The other way is we see the devices that are proliferating across the board. The use case, I think FIDO Alliance did a great job of taking your credentials from device to device to device, so that if I have a passkey that I can transportable easily in a secure fashion, right? I think those solutions are there. The developers can help us kind of driving that to their consumers, right? So I think those are the two big areas where they can drive adoption, right? We got to drive adoption.
And I know Okta has a major developer business, so I'm sure you're working out a lot of these issues and have a viewpoint and opinion on this. So Vina, maybe you could talk about the developer role when it comes to passwordless.
I mean, I think there's an expectation. Actually, the developer is driving this mandate to move away from passwords. What I would say is the experience of a developer. It's not even just the customer's experience. A developer experience is now mandating that all resources are accessible through a passwordless journey, and that's what we're seeing with our customer identity solution. And even within our own journey within Okta, what we've seen is the evolution has shifted from, initially it was driven by a customer or employee experience driver, right? To where we're wanting to create the most seamless, secure experience, mostly driven by the experience, right? And what we've seen is it's actually a combination of both the developer and employee experience, as well as a security driver, right? And so it's a win-win, right? You're optimizing the experience for your developers, for your customers, for your employees, and at the same time, you're driving a much stronger security posture. So it's really been an incredible shift for us.
Great.
I got kind of one thing, if you don't mind. So
sure.
One good thing about the FIDO standards is it actually bakes a lot of advanced cryptography into public specifications. And like cryptography is hard to do, right? And so I think one reason why developers have relied on passwords, they've always been there. But by actually building this advanced cryptography into, say, Web Authn API and the FIDO specs, it makes it readily available to developers to actually do advanced crypto without having to know advanced crypto, which is really important. And then it's folded into platforms like Okta CIO, where they can readily and quickly integrate this functionality into their apps and services.
Great. On this theme of transitioning to passwordless, it just brings up that huge topic of implementation, and there's costs and those kinds of considerations. So maybe Andrew, you can talk a little bit about the consumer side of this process and what you see will play out.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to what we were talking about before, which is usability. So we've broken down the user journey into something like between 20 and 50 touch points when you're trying to engage the consumer to take an action, a conscious choice in authentication. And to get them to enroll and leverage passkeys is slightly different than you would do, say, to get them to create a password or even use like a traditional biometric to sign into websites. So I think it's really important to understand that user journey, and it starts with, it's not so much design as it is, say, messaging. How do you get people comfortable with this? Like we talked about, people don't like change, and in fact, every survey we do and every survey you see everyone do, generally around 20 to 30% of people want to hang on to their passwords, right? And so that's something we have to tackle as an industry, right? So I think that gradually, so we now, we'll be able to prescribe an optimal way of deploying passwordless solutions, but you need to consider, that big chunk of the population that wants to keep on doing things the way they know how to do. And little by having positive experiences, I think that number will winnow down. But we need to make sure that, that the flagship adopters, early adopters of say, passkeys at scale, do so in a way that it actually does generate a positive user experience, such that consumers will become familiar, comfortable, and actually start seeking out passkey sign-ins rather than password sign-ins.
And the same question to you, Vishnu, but more of the focus on the workplace and on the enterprise.
Yeah. So as I said, my week doesn't go by like talking to our clients about how they can start enabling passwordless, right? Everybody's thinking about it, especially on the enterprise side, for two reasons. Obviously, Alvina hit on that. It's more secure, right? A lot of attacks that we see are related to like phishing exercise and the FIDO standard, and most of the relevant protocols and standards that we support today are all phish resistant, right? So you're taking the attack vector out of the picture, which is, and also at the same time, you're helping your users log in seamlessly, right? So I log into my desktop with a passwordless experience. From then, I can navigate to all my corporate resources without having to re-authenticate or using the password again, right? That's a tremendous experience for a employee, and it saves obviously a ton of time and operational efficiency and all of that. So a lot of organizations have started their journey towards passwordless from an enterprise perspective. That doesn't mean that you're totally getting rid of the password. You still have the password, but you are slowly shifting towards not using the password to authenticate, right? You still have that as a backup, or certain scenarios, certain use cases where I cannot use my FIDO credentials or passkeys to log in, right? So I'm seeing more and more shift towards the passwordless future on the enterprises. And again, right, as I said, it's a lot more easier to tackle than the consumer space, where you have hundreds and thousands of websites and you can't really enforce or control, right? So enterprises are in an advantage where we establish the standard when they show the technology is ready for the end users to use, and their employees and workforce are adopting those standards, right? Whereas consumers, it's a lot more, I would say, different players, different websites, a lot of, it's just wide spectrum.
Okta has been on this ambitious passwordless journey. And, so Alvina, maybe you can talk about some of the challenges and delightful surprises that have come about through this whole process.
I mean, Vishnu just hit it on the head. I mean, on our whole focus around this passwordless journey was this move towards phishing resistant flows across all resources and across any device. And I mean, if it was easy, everyone would be there at this point, right? So it's definitely been a journey. And what we've learned, and at this point, we've made extensive progress, in partnership with our product team and our engineering team, and partnership with security to roll out our new ZTA features, device posture, signals, with strong partnership with many of our partners like CrowdStrike and Jamf. to truly be able to redefine our authentication policies and also, enrich the signals. So it's been a journey. We are roughly at around 83% passwordless at this stage, and we have a path to get to 100% in short order. And it's really in partnership with our product and engineering team, and our position is to be able to not only share our journey in what we've done to drive phishing resistance factors across every resource and every device, but also provide a playbook, because as Vishnu mentioned, right, enterprises are we need to have the discussions with enterprises and meet them where they are, and be able to share with our customers and partners what our own experience has been, and what platform improvements we continue to make, and what extensive partnerships we continue to invest in to be able to drive and make the experience much more seamless for our customers, right? Our own journey has been as a beta early adopter of our FastPass solution, and so that experience has allowed us to think through what is needed to be able to address phishing resistance flows across every desktop and mobile platform that we use as an organization and that our customers would use. And so it's been an incredible experience. And the surprise, you mentioned the delightful surprise. What I would say is that while we obviously are focused on this from a security perspective, the surprise is how incredibly seamless and amazing the experience is to our users, right? To be able to be in a position where not only are they able to have a passwordless experience, but being able to then marry that with role-based access controls to then have access, based on your role to what you need to be able to do your job and be as productive and successful as possible. That has been our journey, and what we continue to get feedback from our employees globally on how amazing our experience is, and what we can then now showcase to our customers.
Yeah, you mentioned the FastPass solution. It's a new product. So maybe you can talk about some of the features and benefits of what you put together.
Yeah, so this is part of our Okta Identity Engine, and it's capability within our workforce identity solution that's been around for since our inception, and it's our new core platform capability that has FastPass capabilities that allow us to provide phishing resistance factors, and ultimately realize what we just described, which is this passwordless experience. And so it's our opportunity to be able to extend our workforce identity product to truly realize what we believe is the future for identity, which is providing the most seamless and secure experience, and no longer needing passwords to deliver that experience.
Great. Vishnu, we've talked a lot about use cases already, but it seems like they're endless, which is a good thing. Maybe some use cases that you've seen with passwordless we haven't talked about so far.
I think that there are tremendous amount of progress over the last couple of years that FIDO Alliance and the industry standard bodies have done, right? We have most of the devices supported by the passkeys model, right? The following FIDO standards. I think there are a couple of areas that they're working towards is, hey, what happens when I switch devices, right? So as a consumer, I always use my phone, I upgraded my phone, how can I seamlessly transition those over to the new device, right? I think there are specs that are being published. Once some of those kind of take place, Andrew, you may be closer to that than I am, but I think those edge use cases are also being worked on and being built into the spec. So I think from a coverage standpoint, we'll get almost any consumer use case you can solve with the standard that you have. Again, you just have to adopt the standard. and leverage the technology that is out there. Whereas some of the, like, on the workforce side, you have things like folks working on a manufacturing plant, right? They need to authenticate. They cannot carry any other device, right? So that's where we still see some password reliance, right? So again, the goal is not to take out 100% password usage, at least get close to that, right? We had this for like 60, 70 years, as we talked earlier, but we got to reduce the reliance on passwords, if not totally eliminating them, right? So I think the industry is driving towards that. There is more push than ever, not only from an experience perspective, but also from the security standpoint.
One of the cool things about open standards and open markets is that it creates competition and innovation. So we have, I think, almost 1,000 FIDO certified products on market. We have hundreds of members in FIDO Alliance.
Yep.
We have a vibrant and highly competitive, vendor ecosystem who are getting use cases like Vishnu is talking about and figuring out how to solve them. And so I'm constantly blown away by some innovations from our members. So I think these, the 80-20 will turn into like an 85-15, 90-10 to the point where these corner cases are either addressed through product implementations or brought back into the spec development group, like Vishnu is saying, to make sure these things are addressed in the specifications themselves.
Yeah, so we in this presentation so far, this discussion, we've seen that that when it comes to passwordless, it's not just about cybersecurity. There's a real business proposition to this, and sometimes it's just the simplest things, as we've seen with a password reset. That the amount of wasted time and cost for a company is just staggering. Really, it really is. And then we build all these and buy all these technologies to help deal with something that we could have gone to the root cause in the first place. So the question I have is, more from the business impact, not cybersecurity. Anything else we haven't talked about? Some of the other business impacts that we can realize by going in this direction. Maybe start with Andrew.
Well, I think on the enterprise side, we've hit on some of the key ones, right? So password resets have a direct cost, also a productivity cost. Right? You want your employees to be productive and happy. If they're not online, that means they're not working. So every moment lost is a dollar spent unnecessarily. And generally, some of the studies we've seen in the enterprise, where companies are deploying either security keys or using built-in capabilities of devices, employees are more productive and happier. People don't. It's just having to reset a password is a very frustrating experience. Especially if it's something for your job and all of a sudden you can't access services. Like that does not lead to a happy workforce and added expense as well. And let's not forget the fraud cost, right? Or the cost of a breach, or a cost of an MFA bypass attack. If you are a cloud service provider and you get breached, these are major issues that have both direct costs, also reputational costs that no one wants to take on. So I think those are kind of the impacts of depending too much on passwords. And of course, the positive lens on that is that if you are deploying a better authentication experience, you'll have more productive employees, happier customers, and the opportunity to generate more revenue through added and easier service consumption.
And Vishnu, do you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, I'm not. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So we talked quite a bit about the workforce and how they're progressing, even on the consumer side, right? Like a lot of leading companies on the major consumer websites that are out in the internet support passkeys, right? So we have to start using them, right? That makes your account secure. It also stops the account takeover, which is the primary use case for fraud on the internet right now, right? So we can less ton of benefits. I think the silver bullet for me is the standards are there, the vendors are there, the internet the big consumer sites on the internet are supporting this technology. I think it's on the users and consumers to start leveraging that technology. I think we are at an inflection point. The more the consumers and the users start driving that change, I think we're going to get there very fast. And if not, I think the security requirements are going to force us getting there, right? A lot of enterprises are talking about it. Once you get used to that on the enterprise side, as a consumer, you may be more inclined to use that on a social networking site or on a public email provider, right? So I think it's also familiarity of the end users. As they get comfortable with these technologies, they'll start using more and more, which would create better outcomes for just in general for the overall internet security.
So we're getting to the final stretch, and we have questions in the last 15 minutes. So feel free to, in the chat bot to provide any questions you have. But let's go into the future. So as we I think Andrew mentioned before, Bill Gates did something you would think he'd be good at, and that is predicting technology. And what we found out is that he tends to be wrong about a lot of things, and he was wrong about the passwords. So I know it can be a hazardous duty to engage in these types of predictions. But get out your crystal balls and see if we can come up with some magic here. And what is the future of passwordless, say, for the next few years? It sounds like we are making a lot of progress here. But maybe some of the things that we're not thinking about, you might see happen. So maybe we'll start with Andrew on where he thinks we're going to, kind of move in the next few years, but kind of maybe in some surprising ways.
Well, look, I think we've hit this tipping point now where we're in position to actually solve this password challenge. It's always been a journey. It remains a journey. I think for a while, people transition from password dependent to password independent or codependent to password free. But I do believe in the next 3 to 5 years, the vast majority of consumer services will offer password-free sign-in options. And of course, our hope is that those will rely on things like passkeys, where you're actually getting rid of not just passwords, but any sort of knowledge-based shared secret. And you see innovations, the pace of innovation actually today, even working around the password problem, is pretty good. The sign-in flow has changed. Right? It's not the static username password dialog box in the top right-hand corner has moved away. People are experimenting with things like magic links or kind of a combo sign-in thing where you can either do a reset or sign in. These are all incremental advancements towards the ultimate goal, which is eliminating this dependence on shared secrets altogether. And I do think, again, in the next couple of years, the vast majority of services will offer a password-free sign-in option. And then beyond that, say 5 to 7 years, passwords will start to seem antiquated.
Okay. And Alvina, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Andrew. Today, if you look at today, most identity solutions are still centered on passwords, and I see that completely shifting because of the opportunity that we just talked about on raising the bar, not just for security, but also for the experience that everyone demands. And so, yeah, the passwordless is our future. And it's going to continue to get easier and easier as platform vendors and device manufacturers align on the flows, the standardization of flows for recovery, for issuance, for non-proliferation. And then consumer-centric technologies like passkeys will help democratize the use of phishing-resistant passwordless credentials, similar to how Touch ID democratized biometric authentication. So, I do believe that it's a journey. We're obviously on that journey, and many organizations have started on that journey. We have over 17,000 customers that I'm engaging with who are looking to understand and who have either already started that journey or who are looking to embrace that journey, because they understand that no longer should we continue to focus on the automation of and reliance on passwords and password resets, and that experience is suboptimal at best, and really not where anyone expects in terms of being able to be productive and secure. And so I do believe that eventually we all will be in a position to be able to accelerate our move to a true passwordless experience.
And Vishnu?
Yeah, if we eliminate passwords, we don't have to do password resets, right? So that's a big win right there, right? So like, again, I agree with Andrew and Alvina, right? We are making quite a bit of progress, right? Like, as I said, I have conversations with clients consistently, like how they can start, where they can start, what they can do. Step one, to establish their journey towards passwordless future. The vendors are, there is a very active vendor ecosystem around solving the passwordless use cases and having those solutions out there. We'll next 3 to 5 years, I think we'll make tremendous progress in terms of making passwordless as your first option of authentication, and then maybe have password as a backup where you need in certain use cases. But broadly, like, after that, we may be able to eliminate the password totally. But in near future, still have to deal with the passwords with an option to use passwordless as much as possible, right? And use password as a backup option. That at least that's what I do personally, right? Most of my use case, I have my own passkey that I use on all my consumer websites for authenticating to my social media, for example. So the more the technology is out there, the more you start using it, you get comfortable with it, and you, as an industry person who deals with that, I think, tell this to your family members, friends, to start leveraging the technology, right? I think that's a very important thing to drive this from a user adoption perspective.